These are 6 John Wayne movies that even Hollywood tried to erase. One was banned for being anti-British, one vanished for 20 years, and one was such a disaster, Wayne nearly punched the director and walked off set. Let's dig up the movies Hollywood never wanted you to see. Island in the Sky is one of the most overlooked survival dramas in Wayne's filmography. He plays Captain Dooley, a World War II transport pilot who's forced to crash land his C-47 up in the frozen wilds of Labrador. From there, it's just him and his crew fighting the brutal sub-zero conditions, waiting for help while search teams scour the wilderness. There's no Hollywood romance, no side plot, just a stripped-down fight for survival. What's interesting is Wayne's performance here. He goes against type, drops the usual tough guy confidence, and plays a leader who actually looks unsure, even a little scared. Not neurotic, he's still John Wayne after all, but you see him start to crack as things get desperate. It's a minor classic if you're into realistic survival stories, and the cinematography holds up. The weird thing is, Island in the Sky just vanished for about 20 years. It got buried after Wayne's death because of rights issues. And it wasn't available on TV or home video for decades. By the time they restored it and brought it back out in 2005, an entire generation of movie fans had missed it. No surprise, it became one of Wayne's most obscure films. Even though he was so proud of it, he put his own money in as co-producer. Allegheny Uprising dropped in late 1939, and right away it ran into trouble. The film takes place in pre-revolution Pennsylvania, with Wayne as Jim Smith, a frontier leader inspired by the real Black Boys Rebellion of 1765. He tries to stop British traders from selling gunpowder to hostile tribes, basically stirring up a colonial revolt. Timing couldn't have been worse. The film came out just 1 week after John Ford's Drums Along the Mohawk, which stole the spotlight. RKO barely got their money back on it. But the real controversy hit in the UK, where British censors banned the movie during World War II. With the country fighting Nazi Germany, nobody wanted a film that painted British officers as the bad guys. So it got pulled for being anti-British just to protect morale. Even Wayne didn't love this role. He later called Jim Smith the only cautious character he ever played and admitted the part was kind of dull compared to his usual action heroes. Smith is measured and strategic, nothing like the Ringo Kid in Stagecoach. Unsurprisingly, Stagecoach, released a few months earlier, made Wayne a star and overshadowed Allegheny Uprising completely. Now this one is a real oddity. The Barbarian and the Geisha stars John Wayne as Townsend Harris, the first U.S. consul in Japan, arriving in 1856. The story is all about Harris struggling to open diplomatic relations with a country that sees Americans as barbarians. He eventually builds trust with the local governor, bonds with a geisha, helps stop a cholera outbreak, and in theory paves the way for American trade with Japan. The problem is, Wayne just looks completely lost in this one. Critics said he was totally miscast, and you can see it. He looks awkward and stiff, out of place in an action-light historical drama. The New York Times called him bewildered and repressed in the part. Others were less kind, straight up calling the movie embarrassing. The public agreed the film bombed and didn't make back its budget. Even with John Huston directing, most Wayne fans never even saw it. The production itself is infamous for a blow-up between Wayne and Huston. Things got so heated on set, Wayne actually punched Huston during an argument and almost quit the film. He later said, "For a while I couldn't make up my mind whether to flat quit and go home and let them sue me or stay and give this thing a whirl." He stuck it out to finish the project. Never worked with Huston again, though. Tycoon is one of those big, colorful productions that tried to show John Wayne as something other than a cowboy or a soldier. Here he's Johnny Monroe, an American engineer in the Andes, hired to blast a railroad tunnel through a mountain for a demanding tycoon. On top of the job's dangers, landslides, mutinous workers, accidents, Monroe also falls for the boss's daughter. It's a classic Hollywood setup. Engineering challenges, clashes with authority, and a romance that complicates everything. The story keeps ramping up. A tunnel collapse, then a race to build a dangerous bridge as a backup plan. Instead of gunfights, Wayne uses dynamite and engineering know-how. He's a man of science here, not just action. RKO threw everything at Tycoon, spending $3.2 million, by far their biggest budget up to that point. The tunnel collapse scenes used real explosives on location, and for the finale, the crew built a massive dam burst, which for 1947 was about as big as effects got. But none of that spending paid off. Tycoon ended up running too long, 128 minutes, and despite all the disaster scenes, it just didn't catch fire with audiences. The film made back only part of its budget and ultimately lost more than $1 million. In the end, it felt slow and a little dull. The very next year, Wayne starred in Red River, a much better film that quickly overshadowed Tycoon. Back in the early 1930s, John Wayne's career barely held together. After his big break and The Big Trail flopped, he spent years cranking out dozens of low-budget westerns and serials. By his own count, he did nearly 80 horse operas during the 30s. The Three Musketeers is one of those projects, a Saturday matinee serial. Not the famous Dumas story, but a loose reimagining set in the French Foreign Legion. Here Wayne, still credited as Duke Morrison, plays Lieutenant Tom Wayne, an American pilot serving in North Africa. He befriends 3 legionnaires and together they battle El Shaitan, a masked insurgent leader. The plot is a mashup of war, mystery, and action. Wayne's character gets framed for murder, flies biplanes, and fights desert ambushes, all in 12 breakneck chapters. Production was lightning fast, just 3 weeks, and the stunts, acting, and sets show every shortcut. The Three Musketeers was pure matinee fare, kids, cliffhangers, and plenty of horse chases in the California desert. Over time, the serial became a cult curiosity for die-hard Wayne fans. Most people only know it through Desert Command, a 60-minute feature version edited from the serial in 1946. By 1970, Wayne and director Howard Hawks had already teamed up twice on the same basic formula, Rio Bravo and El Dorado. Rio Lobo, their third outing, sticks to the template. Wayne leads a group of allies to free a town from corrupt officials and outlaws with a final shootout to restore order. This time, there's a Civil War prologue. Wayne is Union Colonel Cord McNally, who after the war teams up with 2 former Confederate raiders to hunt down a traitor. Their search brings them to Rio Lobo, Texas, a town terrorized by a gang working for the traitor. The setup feels familiar. A jailhouse standoff, a mix of young gunslingers, comic sidekicks, and Wayne as the moral anchor. Jennifer O'Neill plays the tough heroine, and Jack Elam steals scenes as the crusty old sheriff. But by now, the Hawks formula is starting to wear thin. Rio Lobo underperformed at the box office, earning about $2 million short of its $6 million budget. So it was a financial flop even with Wayne's name. Critics were harsh too. Variety called the direction listless and complained the plot felt tired. This ended up as Hawks' final film, but it wasn't a victory lap. Even Quentin Tarantino, decades later, pointed to Rio Lobo as proof that even legends can overstay their welcome. He said it was this movie that convinced him to quit after making 10 films. John Wayne himself just shrugged off the critics, calling it a typical John Wayne Western, and said if he'd listened to reviewers, he never would have had a career at all.